Hello and welcome to the Which Bookie YouTube channel. My name is Dave Young. You may better know me as Cheltmental. I'm joined by horse racing tipster from whichbookie.co.uk, Will Smith. I say from whichbookie.co.uk. I'm on there as well now. I've been signed up since October. You're going to find all our daily horse racing tips at that website, whichbookie.co.uk. I'll put a link in the description. But for now, we are back putting video content out on the YouTube channel. And in this episode, we will be previewing the Cheltenham November meeting. 3 days of decent action, and we can't wait to get stuck into it. Before we do that, though, I just want to remind you guys, if you are new to the channel, please make sure you are subscribed so you'll be updated when we upload new videos. There's plenty of content coming up. And if you do like the video, make sure you drop the video a like on the like button and drop a comment below if you fancy anything this weekend and you want to tell us what to back. Right, Will, let's crack on because we've got plenty to get through. It's good to meet you, good to speak to you, and it's good to preview some decent racing. November meeting at Cheltenham's always littered with, well, not necessarily always littered with festival winners, but there's been plenty over the past. But there's plenty of nice horses to go out these few days. So we will just crack straight on. Conditional Jockeys Handicap Hurdle, the first race on the Friday, the 110. Quite a big field, and I believe there's maybe one or two you like in here.
Yeah, hello Dave, hello everyone. Looking forward to a cracking 3 days down at Prestbury Park as ever. And it starts in customary fashion with, as you said, the Conditional Jockeys Handicap Hurdle, which is often a race that the Pipe Stable have pinpointed one or two of their better handicapped horses at. They're trying to do so the same again this year with American Sniper, last year's winner, and Phantom of the Points. But American Sniper went to Newbury last week for a winnable opportunity, so I just wonder if he's maybe left that race there. And Phantom of the Points is a horse that I think will probably want a fence in time and slightly softer ground. So just wonder if they might find it hard to pick up this prize again. There's the prolific winners in here as well, Plaisir des Flots and Double Powerful, who are just winning machines, really. But they've been in lower grades. So I think they might just find things a little bit trickier around a type of track that they're probably not used to before. Whereas there's two at bigger prices that I thought that we know are well up to this grade and should handle the track well. The first is Tune in a Box for Tom Lacey, who was an incredible improver last season, ended up winning at the Punchestown Festival on his final start of the year in really ready fashion, actually. The handicapper obviously lumped a few pounds on him for that, but I think he's just going to be a horse that will continue to improve. And he reappeared this season in the Silver Trophy at Chepstow's October meeting, which for some reason, year on year, seems to be a red hot race, and it's not letting anyone down again this year. It's producing winners left, right, and centre, and quite notably from some of the horses that raced more towards the inside, perhaps on the chewed up ground on the flat course there. Of course, they use the hurdles course on the flat course, and quite a few of those horses that were on the inside that ended up finishing out with the washing. They've come out and actually won since. Take No Chances, the likes of Hershey won a 2 mile listed hurdle. American Sniper himself was in that particular race. Ollie Murphy had a decent horse, Active Authority, that came out and won. Irish Hill. There's just horses left, right and centre winning out of that race that were well beaten. So Tune in a Box, despite being well beaten, he ran well for a long way on the inside. So I think he can outrun his double figure price. And the other one is What's Up With You for Ben Pauling, who is a bit of a standing dish in all these types of races. He's the eldest horse in the race, actually. But he does have a good course record. He was second to Doyen Quest, who I think is a horse to follow, and more of that later. That was back in April at Cheltenham's meeting there. And he tuned up for this with a good run at Fontwell behind Colours on Canvas without his usual cheek pieces. They go back on, and I think he can outdo his 9th place finish in the race last year when the stable perhaps weren't in full cry yet. They seem to be at this stage of the year. So that's your two for that particular minefield there, the Conditional Jockeys Handicap Chase. Tune in a Box and What's Up With You at double figure prices, I'd say.
I like it. Kick us off with a good start. And of course, you'll be able to find out our actual final selections and our daily tips at whichbookie.co.uk. Link will be in the description. That'll be the last time I say that for a few minutes anyway. There's one I quite like in here as well, Will, to be honest with you. It's a race, I think 7 of the last 8 winners have been 5-year-olds. So that's another big box tick for Tune in a Box. One that I like who doesn't tick that box is Victory Club for Harriet Dickin. Now, it's going to take a little bit of explaining to suggest why this horse could win a race like this, but 102 rated. Harriet Dickin had the horse when it was a pointer, went to Dan Skelton, and then had a couple of bumper runs, then just missed so much time off the track. And then that's when it was like re-enlisted as being back in training with Harriet Dickin. I think it was 500 and 30 or 560 odd days off the racecourse before it came back for her. But that was clearly a comeback run, 50 to 1 that day. It's run since as well, so it had two runs after that big layoff. Second run was behind Don't Tell Sue off a levels. Now, Don't Tell Sue did absolutely batter the horse, but is rated 117, albeit got beaten recently. This horse, Victory Club, runs off of 102 here. You go back to the bumper form, which is going back a little while now, but there are horses in and around what that horse did that are rated in the 110s, or even maybe there's one horse that's even higher. But this horse has got a sister that we won on 2 Mile 5 before, albeit on heavy ground. This horse seems to like good ground, raced exclusively on good when it was with the previous trainer, and it's had those 2 comeback runs on soft ground. I think they've been sort of setting this horse up to go and do something. The fact that she had him as a pointer and then has decided to get the horse back to try and go do some business with it. Those 2 runs were clearly just to get back into things, had a summer under his belt. Coming back in a race like this, I just thought he was a real big price. He was 28 to 1 last night. So we're recording this on Thursday. So Wednesday, when we had the final declaration, was 25 to 1. I think he's top price 16s now. So the fact that there's some market support coming in already as well makes him a bit more interesting. But of the more obvious ones, the favourite that is sort of £4 well in, double powerful, would be the 5-year-old top of my list. But I like the look of your 2 as well. So we're going in rowing in with big price horses in the first race then. Probably the race we won't be tucking in with big priced horses is the second race, or probably quite a few of the meeting, because we've got small fields in here. But it's the Paddy Power Novices Chase, a listed race after just the 4 runners. Biggest price is 5 to 1. Buddy One, who of course ran really well at Aintree last season, has got some good hurdle form. Maybe doesn't look quite as good a chaser. Springwell Bay, that was good at Chepstow last month, although that was over a shorter trip. And then Highland, that won at this meeting last month. Resplendent Glaze in there as well for Ollie Murphy. Did you have a bit of a view in this race, or not so much?
Yeah, not particularly, really. I think the market has got them all quite close together, and I think that's probably fair. I think Springwell Bay is the right favourite. I think he could improve stepping up to this kind of trip. So if you had to ask me to try and find the winner, it would be Springwell Bay, I'd say, and probably similar comments really for the Schlur Chase at 220 as well. And to be honest, the cross country, I wouldn't have strong opinions in the middle of the card on Friday, which is disappointing, because it's often quite exciting to try and get your teeth stuck into things. But I think probably discretion is the better part of valor as we go through the middle part of Friday. Certainly from a personal perspective, there might be plenty of opinions out there, from our subscribers that outdo that particular thought, and from yourself, Dave. But I found the middle part of the card tricky, I must admit, to find anything of value.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, apart from this Novices Chase. So you've led me beautifully into this, because obviously John Bonn will win the Schlur Chase. Who knows if Conflated will win, but you've touched on it before we came on air that Gordon doesn't tend to send a winner in there. In this Novices Chase, though, it is a race that admittedly would be price related for me, because I think we don't know for definite who's going to win the race. Springwell Bay is always really good fresh. I liked the Chepstow run, but I don't really like the fact that it was over the middle trip, and this is now going over a bit further. Highland's the one that I will be betting in this race. Will be definitely being in my column, because of this horse won so well last month at the October meeting. I know that he wasn't the best hurdler of all of these, but we've seen with Buddy One that it doesn't literally translate like that when they do go over fences. This is an interesting trial as well, this listed race, because lots of the winners of this race have either made their chase debut when we've had the likes of Thistlecrack coming in and winning this, or they ran at the October meeting. Even when the real Wacker won it, he didn't run at the October meeting over fences. He ran in a handicap hurdle. But course form over fences at Cheltenham, especially for novices, I think is a huge advantage. So the fact that Highland's 5 to 2 second favourite and Springwell Bay's 13 to 8, I do see the race a bit between those two, although the others obviously are respected. But I'd have Highland favourite in this, and for that reason, I will definitely be betting Highland in this race. So there's a little spoiler alert for the column that will be coming out. But yeah, I think Highland's got a proper chance in there, but it is price related. If it was the other way around and he was 6 to 4 and Springwell Bay was 5 to 2, I'd probably be trying to make a case for Springwell Bay. Right, we'll skip in these ones in the middle, because I think everyone's in agreement there. Nice enough races to watch, to enjoy John Bomb, but we don't have to have a bet in every race, do we? The Hyde Novices Hurdle, though, it's a grade 2, so whether we've got a strong opinion or not, I'm going to make us talk about it, because it's a good class race. We've seen lots of nice horses running in this particular race. It does typically suit a horse that looks like an Albert Bartlett type in the past or in the future. Time Hill did win this race before, and then obviously there was the dispute of whether he was going to be a Ballymore horse or an Albert Bartlett. We've had Hermes Allen win this, Manila Missile we haven't seen since, won it nicely last year. This race will. I personally struggle to break this one up. I think the market's probably got it almost spot on here. Valgrind was obviously an emphatic winner last time out, but I think a lot of people are questioning whether they can trust that form. But then, are we being stupid not to? Potter's Charm was a nice, resilient grinder of a performance last time. And obviously, Valgrand's run was at a shorter trip than he's running in here. So 2 miles, 5 furlongs, grade 2, Hyde Novices Hurdle. Can you give us the winner?
Yeah, it's an interesting, well, I say interesting market. There's not much between them at the top, but the initial pricing was Potter's Charms as quite clear favourite from Valgrand. And I just felt that was wrong. I thought Valgrand should have been favourite on what they did at the October meeting, sort of crunching the numbers and going through the times. Obviously, now Valgrand doing what he did, it was over 2 miles, but his cruising speed and his pace that he showed on that occasion, I get the impression it might just draw the sting out of what Potter's Charm was able to do over that 2.5 miles last time out in a slightly slower run race. Now, the one thing kind of holding me back from being incredibly strong is that the Twiston Davies camp seem to wax lyrical about Potter's Charm. They seem to think that he really is, one of their next potential superstars. He's not yet shown on the track anywhere near what they feel he is capable of doing. So when you have a stable like that making comments like that, you've got to pay respect to it. For all that, I'd always place more emphasis on what they've actually done on the track. So purely crunching the numbers and purely going through the races, I think Valgrand should be favourite. I think the nature of the race, yes, he's stepping up in trip, but I don't see that he's going to have too much pressure on a prominent position. I don't think he has to lead, but I think it was just his natural ability that took him to the front, and Harry Skelton just let him roll away. If he does that and he's able to get breathers in, then, still on ground that will have been watered, but it'll still be on the good side. I think he might just have too much pace for Potter's Charm. So that would be the way I look. I think Valgrand should be favourite.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating race to find out, because, of course, Dan Skelton said after, didn't he? He was like, well, we need to see him back it up if we're going to believe it. So you've got one camp that's, like you say, waxing lyrical about a horse that hasn't done as much as they're making out to be. And you've got another trainer that's thinking, Jesus, I didn't think this horse was actually capable of doing that. But he could be an absolute aeroplane, couldn't he? Looks a real good race for watching. My opinion on this is mute, really. I'll leave it to you to say that. I mean, I think Valgrand does deserve to be favourite too. He's coming in for support as well, isn't he? So it may be that by the time that people watch this, he is already favourite. Right, we've got a good novices handicap hurdle to close out the card. You're going to bookend it, I think. You're going to give us winners in each of the races. I've got a couple in here that I've got on my short list, but do you have a stronger opinion than me in this, Will?
I think that's a good question. I have a strong opinion in that I think there's a horse in here who could be absolutely lobbed in this particular grade. And it's not particularly original. I'm not going to look like I'm clever or anything here, but it's Fasol for Paul Nicholls, who he got off the flat and was a genuine group horse on the flat in Ireland. He was 3 lengths behind Al Kareem in the Group 2 pre-Chardonnay back in October of 2022. So he's a 100-plus flat horse, and he's had a couple of runs over hurdles, both of which he'll have been nowhere near fit for. And it will have all been about an education, really. And he actually jumped quite nicely. I was really taken by how he did take to the hurdles, because you often find these classy ex-flat types, they just want to kick them out of the way, or they break their stride and they lose their momentum. But he actually was meeting them on good strides and hurdling well. So the fact that he finished 4th and 2nd meant the handicapper had to give him a mark, and he's gone with 108, which I just think is, it's a guess. It's even on the bare form of what he's done, it's actually slightly generous. And I just think there's so much more to come from him. It might be ultimately that he needs a bit further, but I can't imagine that there's not going to be a solid gallop on here. And I just think he could be potentially a 130, 140 rated hurdler, given he seemed to take to them quite nicely. So, look, he is favourite. I think he deserves to be so. But it's probably one of those where you're looking back and you're thinking, well, should I have taken 4-1, 9-2? And, in hindsight, you're thinking, well, actually, that might still be a value price, which is quite, bizarre to say in such a big field handicap. But I do think he's one of the stronger fancies of the day, I'd say.
Oh, I like that. And it's good, these types of races, because it's 16 runners. Most bookmakers are offering 5 places. So when you've got a price about that, like a 4-1 9-2 poke, then there's safety and potentially betting those ones each way. I wonder if you might still get a bit of a price in there, because there's a few in behind. That Bow Hambar was beaten by Pick a Number that went and dotted up in the Swinton, didn't it? Been sold since, and obviously got the front running the race in that Swinton. So I'm not 100% sure that he is as well handicapped as that form might look, but just Harry Derham pretty much in handicaps. Everyone's going to be getting excited about him this weekend. So I can see him being supported. Winless Eric, I am convinced would have won last time out if not for falling. And I think this horse has got a proper chance. The horses that were closing in on the eventual winner, he was going miles clear of them. So I think his £2 rise for that is more than fair. I think he's bundles better than that, but he's only a 4-year-old at the moment. Whether he's ready to even take on this sort of title, I don't know. Letterson's Lily's interesting, isn't she? Because she's got cheap pieces on and then running back at the trip that she probably should run at. Clapper Thunder's the other one that I think I will probably might take a swing at. It's between him and Reckless Eric, I think. Clapper Thunder went to Chepstow in a novice hurdle where Palacio just took the race by the scruff of the neck, went clear, and then Friendship ran in behind. We've seen Friendship come out and win after, but it was the manner in the fact that Clapper Thunder was so well supported for that race in the first instance. Came out and then duly won at Ascot after in a novice hurdle. That was a Class 3 novice hurdle, so arguably better than what most of these horses might go in against. But it's also the fact that the Punchestown sales bumper that he ran in, or Fairyhouse sales bumper, sorry, behind Copec de Boards of Willie Mullins, it was a certain conditions race that you could get into. So Willie Mullins couldn't just pick and choose who he sends in there. But that horse is very well regarded. And this Clapper Thunder went with him for quite a long way. So again, he's another 4-year-old. Maybe he'll be more progressive as the season goes on. But there's probably a handful of horses in here that are well ahead of their marks, isn't there? So I guess it's just who's ready to do their service on Friday. Good race, I think. Good race to close that one out. Shall we crack on with Saturday?
Yeah, decks are in.
So Saturday's got some good action for us. We've got the final declaration for this. We're recording this on Thursday morning. We've had time to get through them. The Triumph Hurdle Trial, the juvenile hurdle at the start of it, for me, it looks like a nice race in terms of information, but not one that I'd be willing to put my money where my mouth is. I do think Prairie Angel for Joseph O'Brien getting the fillies allowance in here probably puts her towards the pecking of the order. I'd imagine she should be towards the head of the market, but the fact that Richard Deegan's the jockey that's come over, with no disrespect intended, I think horses like East India Dock or even Static after what he did last time might be shorter. So Prairie Angel could end up as a bit of a value play in there. And you had a look at the Grade 2 juvenile. Was there anything of interest in there for you, mate?
No, not really. Like you said, I think it would be more informative than anything. These juvenile races at this time of year, there's so many unknowns for me. So definitely interested to see how My Noble Lord gets on, though he's one that is certainly in the back of my mind for something, whether it be a better race than this, and it'll be fascinating to see how they campaign him for JP McManus. Obviously Ollie Greenland and Josh Guerrero have got some nice horses in those colours, and he might well be another one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes we have a standout contender, don't we? Something that's blown us away by wide margin wins, but I just don't feel it yet at the moment. Right, we do have an amateur jockeys handicap chase, the second race, the 110, 3 miles, 1 furlong. This has got to be a bit of you, Will, surely.
Yeah, I like this race, actually. It'll be fascinating to see when we're speaking now, obviously late Friday morning, so the race hasn't been fully priced up as yet, but I'm hoping that the likes of, the ones that everyone are going to latch on to, the likes of Come On Teddy, as you mentioned, first run for Harry Derham, Barry O'Neill booked. There's going to be plenty of people who feel that horse is going to be produced absolutely cherry ripe for that. You've got Transmission, Patrick Mullins booked for Neil Mulholland. He had a nice run round behind Highland the other day, and I think he's a horse that will win some nice races over fences. He did just shift a little bit right at his fences, and quite a few of them were taken out because of the low sun at the October meeting. So I'm still yet fully convinced on him as a chaser. But the one right at the top, and again, I'm going for one of the oldest horses in the race. It's a bit of a running theme here. I'm sticking with the oldies. But Disha Abba ran an absolutely cracking race on his first start for a new yard at Wincanton a couple of weeks ago, when he was just chinned by Remastered. And Remastered, of course, was running a hell of a race in the Badger Beer behind Al Dancer when unfortunately coming down at the cross fence at Wincanton, wasn't he? So I think and hope that might be form which is strong, but in respect to the other horses in this race, one that the layers and the early punters don't quite sort of see the merits of, and they might get a bit excited over the Harry Derham runner or the Neil Mulholland runner. So I'm hoping we might get a bit of a price about Disha Abba He's been around Cheltenham plenty before as well and run good races here, both in conventional races over fences and in cross-country races. So, he'll be fine there. He'll enjoy the ground. Alex Chadwick booked as well, probably no better pilot in terms of an amateur jockey over on these shores. And I thought there was plenty to like about his chance.
I like it. I mean, the two you mentioned right at the start, it doesn't take much finding to find Barry O'Neill and Patrick Mullins in an amateur jockeys type race. They were the two that were on my shortlist. I'll quickly just touch on that Harry Derham thing because we've mentioned it a couple of times, but his strike rate and handicaps alone, Harry Derham, is 25% strike rate. If you backed every single one of his horses blind just at SP alone, you'd get a 13.7% return on investment. Better still is horses that have transferred to Harry Derham, so having their first run for him, and that run being in a handicap as well, is 15 from 16 qualifiers, and it's 180% return on investment, and that's just, again, betting to SP. It's ridiculous, and I think people obviously are going to start to latch onto those things, but within those fascinating stats that are in there, of the 15 of the 16 they've got in, it's a massive strike rate, but there obviously are potential losers in there. Come On Teddy fits the bill for that one, so obviously that's why he's on my shortlist, but they're going to start getting priced into the market, and then when they start getting too short, it then doesn't become as profitable to do, but that's the reason he was on there. Transmission's really interesting, maybe not so much for this race, but obviously the National Hunt Chase now has changed in terms of the way that it's going to be a handicap, etc. Transmission, you touched on his jumping was a little bit not exactly perfect, but it was only his second chase start as well. So as much as this is a race that they could go and win, who knows where he'll lie down the line. But the fact that Patrick's come over to ride him, I thought was relatively telling. I do think, though, the fact that they're both fairly obvious that they probably will be short enough in the market. So, yeah, we're probably better to stick with you, Will. I like the idea of Transmission further down the season, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's price related. If Transmission was a double figure price, then I'd be thinking, well, absolutely. Oh, that was a good run the other day. It wasn't that his jumping was bad. It was just a tiny bit right. And because there are a number of fences taken out because of the low sun, it kind of didn't have an impact on the way he ultimately finished. But I think he'll be better than his mark over fences, definitely. Whether this race allows him to prove it categorically remains to be seen. But certainly he'll be a horse who wins races over fences, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It looks a good one. You've mentioned low sun as well. I wondered if we get through without doing that because they'll be doled off hurdles and fences galore, but we'll not dwell on that. The Arkle Trial, this is a race I really do like the look of. There was quite a few 140s horses that didn't get declared for this, so we had potentially Iberico Lord, Path de Rue, and Jordan's as well for Joseph O'Brien that hasn't come over, so has taken a bit of a hit. We do have Loda Sud in here, who is now officially rated 148. Although that might be a bit inflated given what he did last time out. But I looked at this race and I thought that Loda Sud does deserve to be favourite. We know what he's like around Cheltenham. A second in the county hurdles, decent, isn't it? A lot of his form does tend to be on good to soft or soft to ground. So that's my only slight concern with him. And for all that he's a 6-year-old, he actually did start racing back in, I think it was August 2021. So he's been about for a little while. The one I was toying with, taking him on with, is Lookaway, who's only had, I think maybe one more run under rules than Loda Sud's had, despite being a year older. Now, they went against each other twice last season. Loda Sud pulled up in the Greatwood Hurdle when Lookaway ran really well and ran close to Iberico Lord. Then Loda Sud ran really close to Iberico Lord in the Betfair Hurdle when Lookaway was all but pulled up on heavy ground. So you can't use either of those lines to say that one's better than the other, but they did finish last season in and around the same handicap mark. They were both fifth in handicaps at the end of the season, off a 137, 138. Although official ratings would say that Loda Sud's £11 clear, they do run off levels here, so it's obviously not the same as a handicap, but I don't think there's as much between them as the ratings would suggest at the moment. If Lookaway was a bigger price, he's currently 3-1. I'd be tempted to take him on, take Loda Sud on with him, but I need a bit more value in there, I think. The other thing I'll say for Loda Sud is I know I want to see novices make mistakes over fences because probably the only way they're going to learn. But he ran at Stratford and he was going down pretty much as soon as he came up. He made a big mistake at one of them, and I don't think he could afford to get away with that at Cheltenham. So Lookaway jumped beautifully, ran against Personal Ambition in a match race. We know those match races can end up being quite tricky to fathom how well they ran, but Lookaway's an ex-pointer. He's bred and looks like tailor-made for fences. I don't think there's as much between them in the ratings, but the market's telling us that too, Will, because it's 11-8 Loda Sud, 3-1 Lookaway. But I think you can sense I'm trying to talk myself into betting Lookaway to take him on. Did you have a view in this one? Was there anyone other than them two you think can lay a glove on him?
Yeah, well, I think it actually for the Arkle trial, it's often 3 or 4 runners, isn't it? You get a highly rated hurdler or a potential superstar, and then a couple of also runs. But this is a proper race, I think. I can see absolutely why Loda Sud has been chalked up as a tight market leader, and why Lookaway as well, being a very classy ex-hurdler, why he's up there in skinny single-figure prices as well. But I just wonder if the market has skewed a little bit too far towards those at this early stage, because I think there are a few horses in here that have actually fared with real credit over fences that are probably not being given the respect by the market that it deserves. I think Western Zephyr is potentially one. Excuse me, his mark of 130, I think underplays what he did at Carlisle last time out, which was his first run off the back of a wind up. So he's a player, definitely. And he's also a forward goer as well. So he might just have a bit of a say on the front end of things there with the likes of Loda Sud and Lookaway. And obviously the chase course, you want to be prominent at Cheltenham, don't you? That we know that regardless. But I do think that Breeze River could outrun his price. I'm not going to say he's going to go and win, but he's 25 to 1 as I speak, which I think is way too big. I can see him getting into the frame, definitely. His run last time out at Kelso, your instant thought is, well, Kelso handicap chase down to Cheltenham. But don't forget, this is it's an Arkle trial. It's a novice chase, and Breeze River was beating rock solid seasoned handicappers, the likes of Melistic, Tommy's Oscar, Fringle Dyke. They're proper 140 plus handicap chasers. Now I know in a handicap he was getting weight off them, etc., but the experience he's steadily built up, I think, is quite nice. And it's interesting because he did have an entry in the 2-mile handicap chase on Sunday, and still does, but they're happy enough to declare him here. So I thought he might just be worth a very small each way play.
Oh, I like it. And we've got the dead 8 as well, so we should definitely get 3 places up for grabs. I'm sure the bookies will keep that there as well. And it's interesting with there because all those horses, San Salvador's the only one carrying a penalty. All those horses, I mean, Loda Sud got a real big number for his performance at Stratford, but I'm dubious whether the RPR's it. But Lookaway, Loda Sud, Western Zephyr, and Breeze River, they've all got like sort of high 130s RPRs. There isn't that much between them other than the fact of Loda Sud's debut chase performance, which I'm not buying was as good as it looked first time up. I'm not. Obviously, he does deserve to be favourite, and he could be an absolute aeroplane. But I want to see more, and he's short enough. Right, definitely waffled enough about that. It's going to be a fascinating race. There'll be loads of clues for the season. I'm sure there'll be plenty of winners that come out of that. Will there be as many winners that come out of that are going to come out of the Paddy Power Gold Cup? Probably the best race of the weekend. Although the Great Wood's pretty good this year too. This is a race that's got 15 runners, so it's a smaller field than it has been in previous years, but it's got a few horses that are relatively well fancied for different reasons. I've got one that I've got a fairly strong argument for, but I think it's quite obvious to the viewers already, so I'll save myself for that one. And then a couple of bigger prices that I still think would have a chance, but I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this one first, Will. It looks a pretty good renewal, to be fair.
Yeah, it's up to standard, and I think the fact that Protectorat runs here as well gives an extra element to it that perhaps might not have been there had he. I think he was due to run in the Old Rowan, was he, or something a couple of weeks ago, but the ground hasn't been quite right. Let's hope he still takes his place, because he gives a bit of a shape to the race that we wouldn't normally have had. Whether he's 100% fit and ready, if he is, then he's an interesting player. But I'm a mad keen fan of Ginny's Destiny. I think he's a potential Ryanair chase winner in waiting after what he did last year. Interestingly, just delving slightly into the time comparisons of what he did in with Grey Dorney in the novice chase on the same day as the Ryanair chase last year. On that evidence, he's already a better horse than Protectorat on that particular running and piece of form. If you sort of factor in what the clock tells you, so look, I think he's a Grade 1 winner in waiting. Ginny's Destiny. It's just whether he can do it on this day, first time out, on ground that I don't think is absolutely ideal for him. That would be my worry with him. Paul Nicholls will have him fit and ready to run for his life, as he says. But it just in the back of my mind, the way he improved last season, I just think that he'll probably be better, and I hope he'll be better further down the line, because I backed him anti-post for the Ryanair. So whether he's worth backing at the price he is on Saturday, I'm quite happily let him win at the price he is. The one that thought on the ground, given his prep run, that was a possible sort of bet to nothing each way bet with the extra places with Galore. He's obviously won the race previously. I know he's a bit higher now in the handicap, but I don't think that really matters. I think it's just a suitability for the course and distance that he's already shown. And he got a bit behind the day that he won it, actually, and still managed to win. He's been better since, in that he's held his position early in races, which is what he did at Chepstow on his reappearance run. And that was a good run in a good time in a race that will work out. So I think he's just the solid play, really, Galore. It's nothing fancy, but I think everything's in place for a big run for him. He's had a prep run. He'll like the ground. We know he likes the course and distance. I think he is probably the muggy each way play, if you will.
I like it. Well, there's no such thing as a muggy each way bet when you've got 7-1 about it. Good for you place up for grabs, especially if you think that there's, I'm definitely putting words in your mouth here, but you know what, those types of horses that you feel like are almost definitely going to fill the frame. And obviously you can't say definitely in this game, but had the prep run, like you say, so he's going to be coming here much more ready for it and to do himself justice than some of the other ones in there. Yeah, Protectorat is definitely an interesting one here because he was second, was it 2021 behind Midnight Shadow, beating 3/4 of a length. That was off of 154. Now that season when he continued to race showed that was, I mean, he was probably a bit better than that, but wasn't miles better than it. But obviously dotted up in that Betfair chase after. We've seen him run behind John Bonnet Aintree. We've seen him win that Ryanair last year, which you loosely touched on. So I think he's marked now, although it's £13 higher, he is definitely a stone better horse than he was back then. And I know they wanted to get that run in the old roan to him, but I think that was because they were probably eyeing this up a little bit. His handicap chase, like the last time they ran a handicap chase, was behind Broadway Boy, wasn't it? They just sent him here after he sort of flopped first time up just to, I don't know, see what they were going to do with him. And he actually ran really well, but that was over 3 miles too, which is too far for him, I think. I genuinely think he's got an actual chance in here at a big, big price. And you see this sometimes with the big class horses in here. Some of these just might not be able to go with him. So I definitely think he's interested at 16s. I'm sure he's going to take a little bit of my money. The ground is the tiny, tiny worry that whether they'll actually let him take his chance or not's a different story. But now we're at final decks. We'll get our money back if it doesn't happen. The very obvious one that's, I'm just going to have to say, people are already probably starting getting annoyed with me, will be Imagine for Harry Derham and Paul O'Brien. Because if I've touched on the stats for Harry Derham, I won't do that again. But if you take those stats away, the horse has a form chance anyway. He's clearly a 140s animal. The beginner's chase that he won has got a handful of good 140s chases in there behind. Even the run after, he beat a horse that potentially is a little bit of a rogue in Lucid Dreams that has got form that's tailed off, but has definitely got plenty of ability. And I know he made hard weather of it as an odds-on shot, but it was a grade 2 that he won. Flopped after that, and then obviously he's been sold from Gordon Elliott, but it's not by anything other than the fact that the owners were having their dispersion. A lot of money was paid to get this horse away from Gordon Elliott. I don't know whether he was the underbidder or not, but I suspect he must have wanted to try and keep this horse. He's only a 6-year-old, very progressive, and I think he's only had the 3 starts over fences, 2 wins. That first beginner's chase would suggest that, especially a UK mark of 145, where you're supposed to get the British tax on there, would look very lenient. So even if it wasn't with Harry Derham and all those crazy stats, I'd say that Imagine's got a proper chance. Then you add in the fact that Harry Derham seems to find even more improvement from these horses. He's also been very vocal about how he thinks his horse has got a proper chance. I look at him as the type of horse that at 7-1, again, just feels like a proper freebie each way play in there, with most bookmakers offering at least 4 places up for grabs. So Imagine would be my strong fancy, but I definitely think Protectorat's got a bit of a chance, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Fugitive go well, although he doesn't win often enough. So it looks a good race. I'm anti Ginny's Destiny for. I think the horse is good, but I couldn't have the horse running fresh. I think it lost his bumper first time up, didn't it? Needed the hurdle run, needed the chase run last year. Ginny's Destiny, honestly, Will, the only time I bet Ginny's Destiny last season was first time up because I thought he was going to be a monster. I got him beat. So I will save punters of him or fans of him if I don't bet him this time out. The other, it's slightly curious, but the slightly curious thing in this race as well is 8-year-olds have the absolute worst performance in terms of strike rates of runners in this race. Not only for the win rate, they're down to like 5%, whereas I think 6, 7, and 9-year-olds are about 8%, but also got the worst place percentage record as well in here. So whether there's actually truthfully anything in that or not begs to be seen. But I think Imagine's got a proper chance, and a slight chance I'll give to Protectorat, because I can see him bullying him from the front potentially. Right, good race there. We've also got another good race after this, 255 handicap hurdle. It might not be the class of a Paddy Power Gold Cup, but we get to see Gal Road out again. I gave him a chance last time out. He didn't win. He did probably bump into one, but I've given up giving him chances, I think, now. Nice enough looking race. Doyen Quest, you mentioned earlier. So will you be rowing in on Doyen Quest, Will?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping. I flirted with the idea of putting this one up anti-post at 9 to 2, 5 to 1, which wouldn't normally be the kind of style that I'd be keen on, really. But looking at the entries for the race, it looked like it might cut up a little bit. It hasn't. There are 12 runners in there, and it still looks quite a deep enough race. But he's top price 3 to 1 now, which I'm slightly disappointed about. I was hoping that 4 to 1, 9 to 2 was going to hold, but I just think he's a horse who's going to find a good chunk of improvement up to 3 miles. Again, you look at his pedigree, it screams a stayer. Everything he's done to date has suggested that he's a stayer. I mean, he was faring with credit in 2 mile handicap hurdles with the likes of Steel Alley and Tin Tin Tin, who both run in the Greatwood. And then he went and won at Cheltenham's April meeting over 2.5 miles on the new course, beating What's Up With You, actually, who we mentioned earlier on. So that hopefully receives a bit of a form boost early on the Friday. And then he ran in the aforementioned Silver Trophy. Now, he was actually kept wider than most, so I wouldn't be sort of marking up his form as such. But he, the way he went through that Silver Trophy, to me, I know he finished second to Josh the Boss, but that horse was hard fit, got a brilliant ride off the front, kept wide as well. And I think Doyen Quest did remarkably well to get close to him, given where he came from. So stepping up to 3 miles on a track that should suit, I think he's the one horse in the race that could improve a real chunk for this particular test. Gal Road will be there or thereabouts. If he can hurdle, if he could get out the way the blunder or two that he puts in, he could be a genuine stayers hurdle type horse, I feel, that kind of ability. But he just gets, in a real muddle at his hurdles. He does. And there's always that worry that he's going to clout one and it'll put him back on the back foot a little bit. But he is a horse I like, and I think he's got oodles of ability, but just the jumping for me. So Doyen Quest it is. I
like it. And he does come in here in the right sort of like progressive profile, doesn't he? Coming in and running well, because the only one that I was, like I said, I've sort of given up a tiny bit on Gal Road. I liked him first time up, last time out, but the one that I could reach a little bit for in this race is Thanks for the Help for David Pipe and Jack Tudor. He was actually sent off favourite for a Pertemps final in 2023 off of a £10 higher mark. They've been doing all sorts with him, and of course it's a JP horse, maybe even with Pipe as well. You don't know what their intentions always are with him, but last time out they took the cheap pieces off. They've reapplied him in here. He is down to a really lowly mark. The last time he was down to this sort of number, he's 118 in here. He like won in an absolute canter of a race when he was rated 117. That was just before he went into that Pertemps final and sort of disappointed. But his spring form from last year would still suggest that he's well handicapped. I guess it's just the question of whether it's today or not, whether he bumps into one. But he's 9 to 1 at the moment. There will be a few places that are up for grabs. So he's the type of one that I might take a small swing at in here. For all that I do respect Doyen Quest, I would like to see him do it at the trip. Rather than trust that he would definitely get the trip. He's definitely better than 125, but I don't know whether he's just there yet. So I'm sort of on the fence of him, but I'm also scared to be on the fence of him as well, because I do feel like Doyen Quest could be one of those that just dots up. But yeah, Thanks for the Help would be sort of on my radar, but wouldn't be a race I'd want to get too heavily involved in. Speaking of races not to get too heavily involved in, Will, we can move on to the intermediate handicap hurdle, 2 mile 5, the 330. There's a few nice types in here. Champagne Twist for Ben Paulin. We've got Major Fortune, who was in that Pertemps qualifier at Newbury. We'll talk about where you did put up the winner of that in American Sniper when he was a wild price. There's a few horses in here. Hamsian as well for Tony Martin. He's one that I like, so I think he's well handicapped on that Ascot form. So he would probably end up being my play just off the back of that. But there's definitely some depth in here, and there's definitely some horses I think are better than their marks. So did you have a long short list, a short list, or did you have no interest in it at all?
Well, it's interesting how it's been priced up now following declarations. You've kind of got 4 horses all vying for probably 5 horses really, if you count Fireflyer, who are close up for market leadership. Champagne Twist, Major Fortune, Hamsian and Why Not. I was kind of half hoping that Why Not would be forgotten about a little bit, because she was wildly impressive, I thought, at the October meeting. I don't see any reason why she won't improve again and run her race, but she's priced up probably about right, really. The one that's overpriced as I speak at 16-1 is King's Hill for the Gilligans. Now he's top weight in here, but I think he's earned that particular top weight. And the key for me is stepping up to 2.5 miles for him in a handicap. He was a slow burner on soft or heavy ground last season over hurdles, and he actually finished only beaten 15 lengths in the Supreme behind Slade Steele, if you remember. Now, he was sent off 150-1 that day, but he actually ran a really good race, I thought. He was bang there till quite late on. But for me, he's always shaped, and the way he hits the ground, like he's a good ground horse and a good ground stayer at that. So he's had a few runs at back end of summer. He had a couple of spins in some small field conditions races at Galway and Sligo, behind the likes of the Wool Park, Solness and Colonel Mustard. Now, they're all, 150 plus horses generally. I know some of them over fences, but on their day, they're proper decent animals. And King's Hill, again, was faring with credit against them. So I think it's been a bit of a plan to try and give him some experience and then step him up in trip for his first start in a handicap at this kind of trip. At a meeting that the Gilligans don't, or a course that they don't mind sending, horses with a sort of outside each way squeak. Think the likes of Buddy One and one or two others. So I thought at 16-1, King's Hill was definitely an each way bet.
Nice. There's going to be plenty of movement in this market by the time people start watching this at different days. But looks a cracking race, doesn't it? There's plenty in with chances. But yeah, it does look a bit overpriced there for sure. There's a bumper that closes out a mare's bumper. I've not really done any work on it. Anything from you in there, Will?
No. There's a horse having first start for Harry Derham. So that could be a particular angle. It's not in a handicap, though. So we can't use those stats that you...
We'll see how Jasmine Dairy gets on in there then. Right, let's move on to Sunday. We don't have final declarations at the time that we're recording this. So we'll talk about the races where we have got a bit of an opinion, because some of them we can get in there. We've definitely got to talk about the Greatwood, but we might be able to fly through these a little bit quicker. First race on the Sunday, of course, we've lost the Slower that's moved to Friday now, so it is still a good day's racing, but I don't think it's quite as good as it has been in the past. In the maiden hurdle, though, there's a horse called Kinsheim. I've definitely mullered the name or butchered the name of that one, but for Nicky Henderson, Nico de Boinville, it's a sibling to Joyeuse that's also with JP McManus. This one's owned by JP McManus. A couple of bumper wins in France that look interesting. I think if there's going to be an absolute aeroplane in the race, that would be it. Was there anything in that opener that you'd looked at, Will?
No, I haven't. I must admit, no.
No worries. That Kinsheim, hopefully it gets declared, because I reckon that could be an absolute monster. But we just don't know, do we, when they're coming up having their first starts. The Novices Limited Handicap Chase, the next race. I mean, this would be, I would imagine, a race you'd love to get stuck into if we definitely knew the final decks. We've got a little bit of an idea in here. I think from my gut feeling early on, Baloo was quite good at Ascot last time out, but I was semi-keen to try and take him on next time he runs. Nicky Henderson's also got Nico de Boinville jocked up on Peaky Boy. I want to see Peaky Boy running this race, because I think he's miles better than 132. But was there anyone in this race that caught your eye, Will?
Yeah, there's a few that I think are going to win races over fences. But like you say, it's hard to have an opinion really without it being priced up and without knowing the final fields. But I mean, the likes of Primoz, I think, is interesting for Lucinda Russell. I think he'll win decent races over fences. Lucky Place, I think, for Nicky Henderson could potentially be a nice chaser as well. Western in the Park, who won at Stratford in a lowly handicap, I think he'll take higher order over fences. Buxy Des Epierre, I think, for Venetia Williams will be a horse to take higher order over fences as well. As too will Leader in the Park for Ben Pauling. So it's a race that could be chock full of potential sort of notebook horses. But yeah, for the here and now, it's hard to nail colours to the mask one way or the other. Hopefully by the time we can go up with the recommended selections, I'll maybe have sifted through that race a bit more.
Happy days. So you will be able to check all of those out at whichbookie.co.uk. Nice, we can chuck another little plug in there. But for the 220, we've got the Southam Handicap Chase, 2 mile handicap chase. I think this is the one that you were mentioning about the entry for Breeze River in there. There's again some real good names that are in here. Matata, Third Time Lucky, Liberty Hunter, Calico, Gunsight Ridge. I mean, I've put Gunsight Ridge in the names of like loads of good horses, but a potentially good looking race. Did you have any early thoughts on this one?
Yeah, again, not really, because it depends on who is actually declared. No strong opinion.
No worries. The
Yeah,
the
move on.
stayers handicap chase that comes after the 255.
Yep.
You definitely will have something in this, wouldn't you, Will?
Well, I think it's an interesting race for a number of reasons. I think it'll be a biggish field, and I think there's plenty of horses in here that will perhaps not be ideally suited to this particular test. Lots of nice chasers, but whether Cheltenham and a real stamina test over 3.5 miles on good ground suits them, I'm not so sure. But a couple that, if they are declared, that would be of real interest are Victorino for Venetia Williams, who was a real big improver in 2 valuable Ascot handicap chases on his first 2 starts last season. He then went to Cheltenham at the Trials Day meeting over 2.5 and just never really got into the race behind Galore. I wouldn't see that as a reason to crab him in terms of Cheltenham form. And he then pulled up at the festival on very heavy ground as well. But again, I don't think that was really him. I think he's probably an early season horse, and it'll be interesting if Venetia declares him. And the other one is Man of the People for Fergal O'Brien, who will probably be one of those type of horses that just floats around the 10-1 double figure price and doesn't really move one way or the other. But he's slowly building up quite a progressive profile now. Even though he's 9 years old, he's still really lightly raced. He won here in April, and he was really unlucky at Chepstow in the Native River handicap chase because he kind of got stopped and balked by his stablemate Pull Again Green at I think it was the third last, where it looked like Fergal O'Brien was going to have the 1-2, and then in the end they got in each other's way, and Neon Moon came and picked their pocket. But I think that was a good seasonal debut. So Man of the People, a track that we know he likes. I thought he was of real interest as well.
Awesome. Sounds like there's going to definitely be a few bet for you this Sunday coming up.
I think so.
One of them's got to come in the Greatwood, I'm afraid. Not that we're forced to gamble. We've got to gamble responsibly, etc. But the Greatwood this year is fascinating. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on this one because at the beginning of the last season, I made some comments about Dysart Enos. Fergal made it very vocal that he was going to avoid any competitive nature to avoid the penalty going into the Mares Novice Hurdle. And I personally said at the start of the season, that terrifies me. I thought the reason why the British, like novices in a lot of instances, aren't as good as some of the Irish novices is the fact that they do dodge each other and they don't learn their craft by putting into competitive natures. Of course, she missed Cheltenham and then she unfortunately missed Aintree as well after. So while people will say this has long been the plan, they didn't intend on her coming into the Greatwood off the back of not winning a Mares Novice Hurdle after. I'm a little lukewarm with the fact that everyone's using the form of Golden Ace in that bumper as literally being gospel that Dysart Enos would have won the Mares Novice Hurdle. She's probably well handicapped off of 131. She is a 6-year-old turning 7 though. She's not had that many races considering the age that she is. I guess my argument is that I think she does deserve to be favourite, so I'll put that out there before it comes out. But look, at 3-1, it's probably about the right price. So 75% of the time, I'm right that she gets beat. The thing with her, Will, just to ask you before we go on to like opinions with it, is I feel like she's being touted as like a Mares Hurdle horse. She's being almost talked about like she cannot lose this race and that she's already won the Mares Novice Hurdle. Do you have the same sort of standpoint? Because people are saying that she's the best handicapped horse in Britain and Ireland. And of course, if she goes and wins, or even if she goes and gets beat, that could still be true. But I just don't buy into it. She's definitely a good horse. She's definitely got a few pounds in hand. But to win a Greatwood, you've got to have more than a couple of pounds in hand, surely.
Yeah, I mean, this slightly inadvertently, Fergal O'Brien has kind of gone down the old JP McManus route of how to get a handicap hurdler handicapped. I mean, if you think back to the likes of My Tent or Yours or Regal Encore and one or two other names as well from the recent and longish past, where you just run around in a few smallish novice hurdles, get beat at Hexham in the shape of Regal Encore, of course, and then the handicapper just has to guess at a mark, really, and you know what you've got, in terms of the Darlan would be another one as well, the ill-fated Darlan. And it's almost just happened by chance that Dysart Enos has had these 3 runs. If she'd have run in the Mares Novice Hurdle last year and run well, she'd be in the 140s. So it's happened a bit by chance. I don't know, I think, is the honest answer as to whether she is well handicapped or not. Obviously, on a bumper form, you could make a case for the fact that she is, but yeah, like you say, that experience and that hardened edge in these bigger type races, and the Greatwood's always a fierce-ish race, isn't it? It's always well run. They sometimes congregate on the outside, so you can get a bit of trouble in running. you need a bit of luck as well. It wouldn't be for me at the price at all, but you could see the case, definitely. And it's one of those in the race that you think, well, in time, she might be higher rated, but it's not for me at the price, definitely.
Nice. Well, I say nice because, again, I've done this because potentially some people watching will think I've got something against Dysa Enos. I don't. I just think you can see the way that Fergal talks about her, like he loves her and she knows she's got loads of ability. But I just wonder, I don't know, we see with some horses that potentially get wrapped up in cotton wool and avoid assignments. I just wish he'd let her go and prove how good she is. She doesn't necessarily have to prove anything to me or anyone, but it's in this, a battle-hardened race like a Greatwood. I would prefer her coming in here having battle-hardened experience because I think she would be able to show her full ability. She may well be a stone ahead of her mark, but it's going to be very hard, in my opinion, for her to show that first time up in a handicap of this nature. So there we go. Enough poo-pooing Dysa Enos. It's not fair to do that. The ones that you do like in here, Will, there's only well, I say there's only one. There's one that I'll probably bet in it, but there's a few I think I'd give a chance to. But again, I'll let you lead me into this one to see if we're in similar trains of thought.
Yeah, well, there's one that I do like that I was very close to backing anti-post. I'm glad I'm not, because I'm not sure he's a definite runner or not. It's Liari, Paul Nicholls Liari, because Harry Cobden's jocked up for Burdett Road as we speak on the Thursday. So if he is declared, I will be betting Liari, definitely. Who's a horse who, I'll keep this fairly brief because it might just be completely redundant if he's not declared, but I've got a hunch with him that when you watch him in a race, he just looks like he's a much better horse than he's been able to show. He's got a hurdle mark of 130, which I think, if my hunch is right, he's a lot better than that. He's hurdled really well. He's generally been kept to very testing ground, which I don't think he necessarily needs. It's just the way it's worked out. I think once he gets a bit of nice ground, he could well take off. And he was another horse from that Chepstow card on the hurdle course that was kept to the inside in that 4-year-old handicap hurdle. And he ran, with credit. He was still beaten a fair way, but it was interesting that all the horses that finished in the frame, they swung wide and were held up, and Liari was kind of on the sharp end on that inside for a long way. And I mean, Paul Nicholls' usual MO is to bring a horse along quite markedly from their first run for a race like this, particularly a 4-year-old as well. You think back to we had a nice 4-year-old who went and won it and ran in the race year after year. I can't remember the name now, but that's kind of what Nicholls usually does. So if he runs, I'll be betting him. If he doesn't, I think Be Aware is a very interesting proposition for the Skeltons. Just a Skelton handicap hurdler that looks like this has been a plan. And I think he'll be better than his handicap mark in time as well.
Lovely. Well, that's nicely leading into the fact that I do think Be Aware is probably going to be the one that I'll side with. Of course, you can check the column to find out where we finally do sit, but there's no doubt in my mind there's a handful of horses in here that are well handicapped. You look at Burdett Road, that's just had the 3 spins over hurdles, so the same number as Dysa Enos has had, but he's 2 years her junior. The run behind Sergino as well, like at the time going into that, he was like wrongly supported, I suppose, in the race, knowing what Sergino's done after, but he still didn't run with discredit, and that sort of performance was just his 133s doable. What he did under Harry Cobden before when he came here as well, I was flabbergasted when he was out the back, just held up and cantered past him. So Burdett Road, I think, should be well handicapped. I think that Be Aware is well handicapped. That Sandown Novices handicap final he's come into, that's where Iberico Lord was second, that came and won a Greatwood. I think Harambe for Alan King was even second at the race and come and won this. So it's a real good, obvious pointer coming in here, and it's valuable experience. I think 12-1 about him is ridiculous. I think it's a very, very big price. Under Control was the best handicapped mare in training before the start of last season, wasn't she? And then she never actually got it done. But she's only a 5-year-old, so again, younger than Dysa Enos. She has got a bit of experience under her belt now. She'll be better on quicker ground, I'd imagine. There's a bundle in behind that have got chances. Even Fiercely Proud. Ben Pauling was saying that this horse was a Greatwood horse. He was backed like he couldn't get beat before he unseated his jockey on the way to post at Cheltenham. They had that prep run at Ascot because they needed to get the freshness out of him, and he fell when he was well in contention at the last. He's 25-1 in here, so you can imagine he might be supported and wouldn't be sort of a surprise winner. Even Kraken Rhapsody, that's a massive price, 33-1. There's pieces of form on his to suggest that he's much better than 129. I think this is a proper deep Greatwood. So whoever wins this is going to have to be a very well handicapped horse and a bit of a beast. So I can't wait to see what happens after. Be Aware is probably the one that I will bet at the prices. I think I might have to have a bit on Fiercely Proud as well, but it's just going to be a fascinating race to watch. And for me, I think it is probably the race of the weekend. After this, Will, there is a bumper that closes the Sunday card. Do we want to just leave it there, or do you want to mention anything in the bumper?
I've got nothing in the bumper, but I remember the Paul Nicholls 4-year-old that won the race, won the Greatwood previously, Old Guard.
Oh, yes, Old Guard. Was that, I think Harry Cobden was even claiming back then when he rode that.
He was. Yeah, actually, what I'm sure it might have been Harry Derham that rode him on occasions as well. Yeah. So there you go.
That's a good, nice little blast from the past. But that's the beauty of the November meeting. There's some absolute crackerjacks that have been here in the past. Think of like Rooster Boosters and Detroit City's winning Greatwood hurdles. Like we do get very, very good horses coming in here, and no doubt we're going to see some very good horses this weekend. Will, for anybody that's managed to sit through all of this, we'll give them a Brucey bonus. I'm putting you on the spot now, but of course we can change things in the column. But as it stands at the moment, and if you had to give someone your best bet across the 3 days, gut feeling at the moment, who do you think it might be?
Best bet in terms of best chance of a winner, I'd say Doyen Quest in the 3-mile handicap hurdle on the Saturday. Best value bet in terms of the one that's probably the most overpriced as I talk, probably King's Hill, I reckon, for the Gilligans in the 2-mile 5 handicap hurdle also on the Saturday. I think they're 255 and 330, those two.
Absolute hero, Will. I mean, I was tempted to not even give a nap then because I wasn't 100% sure. Now you've given 2, I'll have to. I'd still say Victory Club in the first race on Friday is already short on him, but the fact there's money coming for the horse, anyone who's watching this early enough, that market support, I think, is significant. I also think the horse is very well handicapped. And then in terms of, I don't know why I've asked you the nap now, because I don't know if I've got one, Will. I think the best bet for I don't know.
John Bond.
I think as it stands, and again, I'll do this because people watch it nice and early, and then anyone that's watching this after Friday's results can see how well I've fared. I do think Highland's got a proper chance. I think the 5-2 about Highland looks quite good, so I'll stick that in as the bonus nap. But of course, you can head over to whichbookie.co.uk, daily tips to find mine and Will's tips every single day. The link stays the same as well, so it's handy if you just add it to your favourites. You can just click on it each morning. Will, massive thank you for taking the time out to do this, and thank you for all your thoughts. Big thanks to all of you at home that have stayed tuned and watched this. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you're dropping a like if you've enjoyed the video. Give us a comment with your best bet of the weekend, and we will be back very soon to see you again.